Hello and welcome to Unlocking Possibilities, the podcast that will help you to transform your life and or your business from the inside out. I'll be bringing to you the best of NLP and cutting-edge neuroscience of your multiple brains. I'll be exploring how these transformational coaching modalities have the potential to change your life. And if you're interested in training to coach others in NLP or MBIT, then listen out for more information about my training courses and how you can become an accredited NLP and MBIT coach. Hello and welcome to this episode of Unlocking Possibilities with NLP and Coaching. I'm your host, as always, Sarah Fletcher. And today we're going to be taking a dive into talking about building mental strength. We're going to be exploring how we can flex that mental muscle so that you can build your resilience, you can increase your well-being, you can feel better more of the time. Who doesn't want that in their life? You can overcome those challenges and you can transform your problems and your difficulties into something else. So I'd first of all like to take you back some time into the past to 2001, when I myself was struggling with my own mental resilience and mental strength. I was a new mum. So back then I was 26. I was a new mum. I was struggling with my own well-being, my own mental health. I was stuck in overthinking, the negative committee in my head was very loud and very, very unkind. I was feeling pretty stressed and anxious and probably undiagnosed postnatal depression in some way, or certainly struggling with the postnatal transition. Also, a newly qualified teacher, so starting in an unfamiliar field and career of work, and wasn't feeling very good about myself. What I didn't know back then was, and there's that saying, isn't there? We don't know what we don't know. What I didn't know back then was that I had not choice particularly about my thoughts. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about choice, but control of my thoughts. We have 70,000 thoughts a day that are playing in the background and are continually whirring and going without us even realizing. What I didn't realize back then was that whilst we can't control our thoughts, we do have choice about the thoughts that we bring into conscious awareness. We have choice about what thoughts we engage with, what thoughts we allow to seep through from our unconscious into our conscious. We have choice about the meaning that we attach to these thoughts, and then ultimately what we do with them and how they make us feel. So whilst we don't particularly have control over them, like I said, we have thousands of thoughts a day on a subconscious or unconscious level that are a result of our past experiences, our past conditioning, our beliefs and our values, things that have happened to us in the past. Your thoughts are a result of all that programming that's happened unconsciously that have, created your identity and your sense of self and your beliefs about who you are. This is all happening below the surface. If you kind of think of an iceberg, the biggest part of the iceberg is below the surface. And it's exactly the same with our mind. Most of your thoughts are out of your conscious awareness, there's a constant stream of thoughts happening that you're not aware of, and you don't have control over those thoughts because, like I say, they are a result of your past conditioning, your past experiences, your memories, everything that has happened. And unfortunately, unknowingly for us, we also don't realize how much they are determining our decision making in the present, our emotional state in the present moment, our feelings of worthiness or confidence, or feelings of being able to thinking that we can do things or that we can't do things. And because most of it is below the surface, that iceberg, below the surface that we can't see, we're not aware of, we don't notice, a lot of the time, this habitual processing and this automatic processing is driving our lives without us realizing it. And this was certainly me, 20 or so more years ago, when I didn't realize that yes, I couldn't control them, but I had choice about which ones I chose to engage with, which thoughts I chose to have a conversation with and befriend, and the thoughts that I wanted to bring into my conscious awareness. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about in this podcast episode. How can we build that mental awareness and that mental strength so that we are consciously choosing the thoughts that are going to help us to feel good, the thoughts that are going to bring about the things that we want in life, help us to achieve our goals and move towards where we want to go, the thoughts that are going to help us to have positive relationships. First of all, a positive relationship with yourself, and then positive relationships with others. The thoughts that are going to drive behaviors in our life that are positive and bring us joy and health and well-being, and bring us the things that we want in our life rather than the things that we don't. So some of you listening might be yourself experiencing anxiety, overwhelm, stress. Perhaps you're stuck in that, like I was, that negative committee that berates you, tells you off, criticizes you, brings you down, all of those ways of thinking that are detrimental to living a fulfilling, positive, feel good life. So what I'm going to invite you to do, now that you kind of know and have a sense of what might be going on for you, and what I also want to say is, it's not your fault. So those thoughts that are happening on an unconscious level below the surface of that iceberg are not your fault. They are a result of how you've been shaped, your past experiences, other people's beliefs, other people's fears, other people's thoughts about things, and that were kind of projected onto you. However, it's your responsibility, if you want to evolve and grow and have a better life, have positive relationships, feel good about yourself, be kind and compassionate towards yourself, be kind and compassionate towards others, to achieve the goals that you want to achieve in life, to live your life with that purpose and mission and intention. So whilst it is not your fault as to what's happened and how you became to be where you are now, it absolutely is your personal responsibility to, if you want to grow in self-awareness and become more in tune with what's going on with yourself, to take ownership of that, so that you can move towards where you want to be in your life, so that you want to become who you want to become, and ultimately make those behavioral changes in your life that you want to make. If you stay in the effect model that we talk about in NLP, blaming other people, blaming your personal history, blaming what's happened, and being in that sort of victim mode of it's not fair, and sort of that disempowered state, I can't change things, it's hardwired in, there's nothing I can do about it. Actually, we know from neural plasticity evidence and from neuroscience that this isn't true. We all have immense capacity for growth and change. There's other factors involved in whether we do change, like, do I want to? Also, there may be things preventing that change, like fear and familiarity, and that, yes, it is hardwired in a sense of the pattern, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't change it. So when we're talking about having more choice in our thinking and giving yourself, feeling more empowered and giving yourself more choice and building that mental resilience and that mental strength, it is about practice. And ultimately, first of all, to be able to do that, you've got to have self-awareness over those thoughts. So me 20 odd years ago, I didn't have that self-awareness. I had a belief, well, this is who I am. This is just how it is. I didn't know that there was another way of being. I didn't know that there was another choice of doing things. I didn't know that I could choose the thoughts that I was experiencing. I could choose how I engaged with them. I could choose the conversations that I had in my own head. I could choose the conversations that I had with others about myself. And I could also decide which thoughts I wanted to bring into my conscious awareness, and which thoughts I wanted to just kind of let them pass by, and off they go. Because like I say, those thoughts come and go, and we get to choose which ones we engage with and which ones we just let pass us by, like kind of, off they go. So first of all, it's about self-awareness, and it's about bringing your awareness to the thought patterns that you might be experiencing. And one of the things that I invite you to do, if you want to, is to get a journal and start writing some of these thought patterns down and noticing what the familiar patterns are, noticing what the repeating patterns are. So things like, do you say things like, things that invite you to think you're not good enough? Or do you say things like, I can't do this, or I'm not the kind of person? Listen to those identity statements of, I'm this or I'm that. I'm not the kind of person who can do this. I'm not, or I am this person. I'm a stressed person, or I'm an anxious person, or I'm a worrier, or I'm an overthinker. Really tune into those patterns of thought that repeat over and over and over, and start to bring those patterns of thought without judgment, without needing necessarily to change them at this moment, bringing your awareness to them. Because what we want to do to be able to build that mental strength is to bring your awareness to what these thoughts are, what the familiar patterns are that you're running. You can't change anything if you haven't got awareness around it. So first of all, grabbing a journal, grabbing a place where you can write things down. And as you notice these familiar patterns, these repeating patterns, these identity statements, write them down and start to just almost like that conscious stream of writing down what's coming up, what things are you saying to yourself, what gets repeated. I can't do this, I'm this kind of person, or I'm not that kind of person. Are they fears? Are they self-doubts? Are they I'm not good enoughs? Are they, critical? Is it that negative committee in your head criticizing, berating? Is it thoughts that are stuck in the past around regret, shame, guilt? Or is it thoughts that are stuck in the future, worrying about things, overthinking, getting anxious about things? First of all, to build mental strength and mental resilience, and to, practice something different, You have to first be aware of what you are currently doing. So start just to write that down, notice it, get awareness around it, and do it with kindness, do it with compassion, do it with curiosity. That's an interesting pattern that I'm running there. You don't have to judge it. This is all part of the problem of, when we don't have mental resilience, because we are judging it, we are berating ourselves, we are criticizing ourselves, we are telling a story about our thoughts. It's kind of, we get into this sort of meta stating of thoughts. We have a thought and then we criticize the thought, or we judge the thought, or we berate ourselves about the thought. So rather than doing all of that meta stating of thought processes, have a thought and write it down and get curious about it. No need to judge, no need to enter into a conversation with it, no need to cause shame or regret with it. A thought's just a thought. It's the meaning that we attach to a thought that then brings all the emotions to it. So writing all that down and becoming really familiar and aware of these patterns of thought that you are running. And then what you're going to start to do is you're going to learn to transform these thoughts. So to build mental resilience, to build mental strength, we want to choose wisely which thoughts we engage with, and then we're going to transform them. So we're not necessarily changing them, we're not getting rid of them, we're not eliminating them at this point. There are processes you can do for that kind of stuff. But for the purpose of today's episode, we're talking about building that mental strength muscle, choosing wisely which thoughts we engage with. So once you've noticed some of these thought patterns, some of these repeating and familiar patterns of thought, you're then going to transform them by using really simple self-coaching questions and asking yourself things like, what would I like to have instead? Or what do I want to say to myself instead? Or how do I want to feel? What you can begin to do is bring the emotional side into it as well, attach some emotion to it in a positive way. So how do I want to feel instead? And then asking yourself, what will be different for me when I have this thought instead, or when I feel in this way instead, and start to invite that sense of curiosity and exploration and imagination and creativity to your thoughts. So like I say, we're not necessarily changing them or stopping them or controlling them. We're transforming them into something else. And you can only transform them into something else when you're recognizing what they actually are, what the patterns are, what the identity statements are, what the beliefs are. So say, for example, if you notice that your pattern of thought is around, not feeling good enough. So I'm not the kind of person who can do that. I always get things wrong, or there's no point in me even trying because it won't work out anyway, or I failed in the past, so there's no point in doing that, or I'd really love to do that, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. I'm not sure I'm the sort of person who can do that. So listening to those patterns, and they could be around not feeling good enough, not thinking that you're capable of doing it, and then start to transform these thoughts by then asking yourself, what would I like to have happen instead? What would I like to be thinking about myself instead? And how do I want to feel about myself? So then you might transform that by saying, well, I want to tell myself that I am able, I am capable, I can do things. I might create a memory and an image of a time in the past when I have accomplished something when I thought I couldn't, and remind myself of how good that feels and how incredible and amazing I am actually when I do something that I thought that I couldn't do. So you might start to create those memories and remember those times. This is where we start to harness the power of the unconscious mind. Create that memory, remember that memory of when you achieved something that you hadn't done, in the past. Or you might begin to imagine, what would that be like for you when you are doing that? So creating a visual, a picture, bringing up an emotion of a achievement, accomplishment, feeling good. And remember, this takes practice. So it's about wiring this in and programming this into your mind and your body. Building that mental strength muscle is about wiring it in and consistently doing it. So first of all, self-awareness. What are those patterns? What are those familiar things that you're saying to yourself? No judgment, no berating yourself or making yourself feel bad. It's doing it with curiosity, doing it with compassion, doing it with kindness, writing that down. We can only change it when we're self-aware, when we notice what we're actually saying and doing. We're not controlling these thoughts, we're not stopping them. That's not possible. What we're doing is we're transforming them into something else. So then you're saying, okay, so if that's my pattern, what do I want instead? What do I want to be saying to myself instead? What thoughts am I going to choose to have instead? What do I want to engage with? And then how will that make me feel? So bring the emotion into it. Because again, going back to what I was saying before, it's the emotion that gives our thoughts impact. So we don't want to give it the negative emotion or the unhelpful emotion. We want to give it really positive energy and good energy. So let's bring the emotional energy to the thought that transforms it into something really good for ourselves. So how do I want to feel? And start remembering past times when you felt like that, or imagining and creating, your unconscious mind. So below the surface, that iceberg below the surface, your unconscious mind works with metaphor, it works with symbols, it works with colors, pictures, images, emotions. It's not logical. So you want to be creating these experiences and these emotions through pictures, imagery, sensations, feelings, colors, metaphors. And, I said about the iceberg. The iceberg is almost that metaphor for our mind, that most of what's going on for us is below the surface. We're not consciously aware of it. What we want to do is bring it to the surface, that tiny bit to the surface, and then consciously choose what those thoughts are that we're going to engage with. Consciously choose how we want to feel. Consciously transform some of those unhelpful thoughts that have become familiar, that have been embedded into our neurology. We're going to transform them into something else. And the thing is, what you've got to remember as well is that these thoughts never go. So once we've kind of made that neural pathway, once you've wired them in, they become stronger and stronger through practice. And they don't go. What happens though is, through transforming your thoughts with other thoughts, you weaken the link. So there's a saying that neurons that fire together wire together. Donald Hebb, who talked about neuroscience and how our thought forms are created, and neurons that unsync, unlink. So what we're doing is we're weakening the link and the power that those thoughts once had by transforming those thoughts with other thoughts. So you're strengthening then the new thought processes and weakening the old ones. However, if you don't continue to do it, as soon as you have the old thought form, it will strengthen again. And this is why it's so important to do the practice, because practice makes permanent. And this is why it's important to write these things down, so that you've got that conscious awareness of what these thought forms are, what these patterns of thinking are, and then you can transform them. So just to reiterate sort of what I've said. So first of all, self-awareness. What are those thought patterns? What are the familiar things that you're saying to yourself? The identity, the belief statements, like I'm this, I'm that, I can, I can't, those patterns that you're running. And then transforming the thoughts by asking yourself, what do I want instead? Adding the emotional charge, the emotional energy. How do I want to feel instead? And what will having those feelings and those thoughts give me in my life? How will they benefit me? How will they bring more of what I want into my life? And then you begin to self coach. And as you know, those of you who follow me and have listened to my podcast and my trainings, I am passionate about supporting people in becoming their own coach in life, and building mental strength and mental resilience is part of this self-coaching method, if you like, because you are asking yourself questions, you are coaching yourself into and towards where you want to go. You're coaching yourself towards how you want to feel. You're coaching yourself towards health, happiness, success, accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish, fulfilling your goals and dreams, and feeling good every single day. So I would love to know how you get on with this. Please feel free to comment. You can comment underneath on the podcast. You can comment here on YouTube if you're watching it on YouTube. Follow me on Instagram. Come and join my Facebook group. There's loads of free trainings in my Facebook group around NLP and self-coaching. Buy my book, Kiss Your Life, The Calm Guide to Keeping It Successfully Simple. There are loads of self-coaching activities in there to do. And I'll see you next time. Have a great week.